All right. So my presentation is Purdue Translingual Writing. And OWL stands for the Online Writing Lab of Purdue University. Purdue University prides itself on being an equal access, equal opportunity university. So, Purdue University was established as a public research university in 1869 at West Lafayette, Indiana. From there, it expanded into several universities such as Purdue University Online, Purdue University Global, and several other locations. The cool thing about being global and online means that it allows for students from across the pond to have access to the university. Purdue University also prides itself in ensuring students graduate with a bachelor degree in 3 years. Also, students have the freedom of expression, which is going to be important later on. It's also the #1 university destination for English majors. To learn about the population, click here, and we get to see, if we look at the most recent year, which is fall 2016, we see that the majority of the students are white. So 18,932 out of roughly 25,000 students of the population, the majority are white, followed by Asian, and there are about 1,500 Latinos. In graduate school, there is about 5,000 students, and the majority is once again white. Faculty and staff, it is broken down into where they fall under. So for tenure, it is mostly white, and that is the same also in pretty much all the categories, and adjunct is no different. So it is a predominantly white institution. Alright, so the OWL Purdue Writing Lab, so we could click on it takes you to two destinations. So the Purdue Writing Lab is a lab that's available on campus to students and staff attending the university. However, the Purdue Online Writing Lab is available to anyone who has questions on writing is welcome to come and take a look at what they have to offer. So if you scroll down, it tells you its mission, but also has navigation, the news site. So they updated because a few years ago they had an IRB approved test to find out how accessible the website was to differently abled users. And they found out that people who had screen readers were having trouble going from one web page to another. So that is why all the tabs are now flushed to the left, because that is how screen readers read. They go from top to bottom, and they go to the next side, and then top to bottom. So a little bit more about the writing labs. There are 2 ways that the user can search the entire website. So one way is right here where it says search the OWL, or on top right here. Both of them will search only the writing lab page. If you go to another page, it will search the whole entire Purdue University website. So that's the good thing about this, that it's limited only to the OWL. So the writing lab is a great resource for outlining important writing concepts that teachers, students, anyone in the community may need to look over. The online writing lab is run by the College of Liberal Arts and Writing Lab staff. So, the actual Translingual page can be found. I put a quick link there, but it'll be found when looking for the teacher tutor resources, and you scroll down to Translingual writing. Introduction to Translingual writing is the first page. So the page, it begins by defining translingualism as a language ideology that is open to language diversity and mainly consists of code switching. So that is what we have here. The definition of what translingualism is. And like I said, they mainly defined it as code switch from one language to another. Then they follow that by defining important concepts that deal with translingualism, such as the world Englishes, which is important because they actually have an World Englishes page under English as a second language. They discuss how language is connected to, the economics and power relationships, so that's important. They also discuss how language is not just limited to minorities, or how it should not be. It should be something that is accepted by everyone. They continue by giving a brief history of where this translingualism ideology came from. And we could see some familiar names such as Min Sang Lu, Bruce Horner, Suresh Kanaraj. Right, so again, it addresses the complexities around language and communication, and it gives a brief overview of the ideology's origin. Then the second page is called the Translingual Approach in the Classroom, and if you click on it, it will take you to this page. So here it is broken down into, we could say, the extent that educators or tutors want to apply the ideology into the classroom. So we start off by by looking at applying it to the whole syllabus, the whole course at a time. Or maybe you just want a certain theme, so portion of your course. Maybe it's only a certain assignment. It could also apply to how you give feedback or how you assess the student. So because of that, it gave me the impression that it was aimed at educators and tutors, because tutors don't always have voice in the syllabus or how assessments are made, but they do in how feedback is given. So that is why I really did like this breakdown, as it depends on how comfortable or willing or able to apply the ideology. From there, we have another website, the suggested readings on translingual writing. So if educator or tutor comes upon this ideology and decides that they want to learn more about it, they go onto the suggested reading page. And we see again some very familiar names, some that we read. So we read Laura Gonzalez, we read Horner Bruce and and of course Palmatulu Lerv Translingual Writing. Okay, so what were my first thoughts while looking at the website? So my first thoughts was that I was unsure of the extent the ideology is supported. So I was like that because it begins with, first they define the ideology, which we see here. They're defining it. what it is. And as they were explaining, it seemed to me that it was very neutral. And then we get to the strategies page. So here, well, not this one, this one. And we start to see some mixed feelings. By that I mean that there are some things that were very positive, such as, we have to make students aware that, language is complex, or things like we can't, judge and focus only on the final product, right? It's, about a process. But in the feedback, there are some things that are somewhat negative. First of all, they show this comment. So teachers should not neglect the potential rhetorical context to which the student is likely to transfer the writing skills practiced in the writing classroom. So that gave me the impression that in reality, students need standard American English. The way you teach them, writing is the way they're going to apply in the future. So you need to not be too lenient. And a similar expression was said earlier when they said that writing teachers should be cautious about being over tolerant when translingual writing is used. So that idea is expressed twice. They also bring up grammar a lot. Grammar is constantly being repeated when they're doing these strategies. And I was unsure of why that was. Was it because the writing lab itself focuses a lot on grammar when they're tutoring students, or is it maybe the professors, the instructors teaching, who focus a lot on grammar, and the OWL web staff know that, so they're trying to target to not be as tough on grammar. However, there weren't all negatives. We had some positives as well. So there was an emphasis on having constant conversation with students to learn about their thinking process. How are they manipulating language? What are they think? Not everything is a mistake. Maybe there's things that we have to teach them. How are they thinking? Another way that they emphasize having conversation with them is to be open with them, to find what the ideology is with them, with readings, with assignments, with their syllabus. Explain what ideology you're following, so that way they understand what's happening in the classroom. So that was really great. They also really did a great job of offering different levels that the ideology can be implemented. So like I said, we have, depending on how comfortable the instructor is on applying this theory, would depend on what they will look at. Do you want to look at the syllabus, at the theme, at simply start small as like an assignment, like the literacy narrative? So I thought that was really great. Then I did some research. So after doing some research, I saw what the Purdue website was, its mission. I looked at the Purdue University website, and when I compared both, I immediately went to, where are my visuals? I'm a very visual learner. I love visuals, as you can tell from my presentation. So that was one of the things I immediately wanted to see more of. However, they are constantly emphasizing accessibility. Not just in terms of users will be able to read and get the information, but it should be applied to everything, to even language. So as I showed earlier, they have the term different abled users. So it's not students with disabilities, it's different abled users. So that is changing how we think of, how we use language. So that is, proof that Purdue University does really emphasize on being an open access, open university. So I did understand that, well, you know what, visuals are a little bit hard to put because screen readers will have a harder time on reading it unless you add a caption. So it's not impossible also to add pictures. It does take a little bit more time. So I thought that maybe a little bit more visuals could help for visual learners, especially if they do want to make it accessible to more people. Another thing that I noticed was that because it's such a diverse university, they will have students speaking many different languages. Here in UTRGB, it's mainly English and Spanish, so it may be a little bit easier when choosing when you're going translingual. Well, it will be Spanish. Here, the majority of the population is either white or Asian, so it will be difficult to be selecting what languages to use. So instead, they went with the universal language of English to ensure that it will be a little more accessible to students across the world. So in that way, it's a little bit of a monolingual ideology by thinking that, well, English is the universal language. But it does help with accessibility, especially when you think of the vocabulary that they're using. It is very easy access vocabulary, so it's not very high terminology. The highest or most difficult word I found was translingual. But even that translingual was very defined thoroughly. We have really great definitions of what translingualism is. So again, because they want to make it accessible. Now, something else that I learned was that it was mainly a white population. And because of that, it was really great to see how, despite the majority of the students being white, they were still trying to improve on their ideologies to try to help their minorities. And as I said in the beginning, they are a freedom of expression campus, but they are aware that you cannot push ideas into another person. You cannot force them to think your way. So because of that, this was meant only as an introduction. If you really feel like you want to apply the ideology, you want to learn more, well, we provide you with somewhere where you can read about it, right? The suggested reading. And they really do leave it up to you. That's why it's perhaps very neutral, because they don't want to force an ideology on you. You get to decide if it works for you. And if it works for you, well, you don't have to apply it to your whole course. You get to decide what works for you. Are you going to start off small, or are you going to, go big and do it overall? So, what did I learn? So I learned that giving your audience a position of how you feel in an argument makes it stronger. When we were reading Horner et al., Gonzalez, Garcia, we knew for sure that they were pro-translingual. And I didn't get that same opinion or view from this website. But it could go back to they're trying to give option, right? You are free to choose what you want to think about the ideology. However, because of that, it wasn't as strong, so, and thinking back to them being an open access university where they value difference, where they value difference And they even have centers for the different minorities. So they have a center for the Asian, for the black, what was it called? Black culture. They have for the Hispanic culture. So they really are really great in trying to be diverse. And so I feel that if they were trying to push that into their readers, into the professors, then they would give a position. We want you to try to implement this in the classroom because we want to be open to the diversity that we have. I also learned some great strategies, which was important because up to now the readings we had were a lot mainly on defining the ideology. So this website went just beyond defining it, but how can we actually apply it in the classroom? And again, it has different levels depending on how comfortable you are. I also realized that maybe it's not being enforced as much. It's because of this the population. It's mainly white population, so it is they're understanding that, like I said, it's code switching. So if these are their monolinguals only know one language, then would it really be helpful towards them? So I think that we need to talk more about these unnamed languages, the language of basketball, of the careers, and talk about what are the benefits for our monolinguals. And again, I put monolinguals in quotation marks because are there really true monolinguals, knowing that there are these other unnamed languages? So I think if more of the benefits to monolinguals are discussed, then it will help convince others that this does not just apply to minorities, this applies to in general, and maybe they will be more convinced to make a position, So I also learned that we need to talk about what are the future implications of the ideology. So if you remember, I talked about how they discuss the potential future context, which is that in reality, what are they going to need to know? And that made me think about the future. What is the end goal? Should we just be talking about this in the classroom, just trying to change the mind of a teacher, or should we be pushing it further higher up to try to change the ideology of everyone in general, not just in the classroom and the teacher? Because that could help with this, what is the future? And finally, I realized just how much I have learned to appreciate multimodality. It's like the saying, you don't know what you have until it's gone. Well, I was looking through these webpage and I saw just how simple it was. I was like, wow, I could really go for a picture here, a picture there. But again, they don't do that because they were trying to make the information as accessible as possible. The information is the most important, not so much making it look nice and pretty. But I really love to have, some visuals somewhere to make it pop out, also for visual learners. Also just to make it pretty. So that is our Purdue Translingual writing.